Welcome to this practitioner-grade explainer of 21 CFR 211 Subpart B. If you're looking to lay down an absolutely unshakable regulatory foundation for a compliant pharmaceutical organization, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a classic Whitehall approach to unpacking the core mandates of US CGMP, specifically looking at your internal and external workforce. We aren't just reading the rules here. We're diving into how these regulations literally dictate the structural reality of your facility. Let's get straight into it.
Let's quickly outline our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting 5 key pillars. First, the quality control unit. Second, qualifications and training. Third, hygiene and access control. Fourth, consultant oversight. And finally, audit risks and decisions.
Okay, moving right into Section 1, the Quality Control Unit, focusing on independence and authority under Section 211.22.
So to really grasp Subpart B, we've got to define exactly what the QCU is under Section 211.22. Listen, it's not simply a department on an org chart, it's a hard and fast regulatory mandate. The QCU has to be established as an entity with adequate authority and, crucially, absolute independence to approve or reject everything. We're talking incoming components, containers, labels, all the way through to the finished drug products. Their primary mandate? To make batch release decisions, review production records, and oversee testing, without any operational interference whatsoever. No pressure from the floor, no exceptions.
Now, the non-negotiable structural protection of CGMP requires drawing a massive, thick line between production leadership and independent QCU authority. Think of production as the engine. They manage operations and absolutely need their own separate budget. But the quality control unit, they're the brakes. The QCU must have the power to independently release batches, and perhaps more importantly, the absolute authority to halt production if something's not right. And that authority has to be totally override-proof. If your QCU reports directly into production management, or if they share a budget that production actually controls, well, that independence is compromised. And trust me, FDA inspectors probe this exact dynamic relentlessly.
All right, let's transition into Section 2, qualifications and training, looking at the internal workforce under Section 211.25. You know, the training lifecycle follows a really strict progression. It definitely doesn't start on the production floor. It starts the minute you're hiring. Step 1 demands that every initial hire is qualified by education and experience before they even touch a process. Step 2 means getting them trained on job-specific standard operating procedures, the exact tasks they're going to perform. Then, Step 3 kicks in. This mandates continuous, periodic CGMP refresher training. It's definitely not a one-and-done sort of deal. And finally, Step 4 requires documented competence verification. Basically, management has to actively assess, through tests or direct observation, that the training actually worked. The who, what, when, and for how long, all of it must be meticulously recorded.
Moving right along to Section 3, Hygiene and Access Control, focusing on physical conduct under Section 211.28.
The absolute crucial point here is rigidly enforcing physical requirements so that only healthy, properly attired personnel are accessing your production areas. Section 211.28 dictates that clothing has to be clean and appropriate to specific duties, along with all the necessary PPE, gloves, head coverings, the whole shebang. It also demands excellent sanitation habits and the immediate reporting of any illnesses that could impact safety or product quality. And listen, there is a strict zero-tolerance policy for food or drink in production zones. Those are for designated areas only. Finally, access control is paramount. Absolutely no one should be wandering onto the floor unless they are explicitly authorized to be there.
Next up, Section 4, Consultant Oversight, covering the external workforce under Section 211.34.
Okay, so here's the ultimate bottom line when it comes to contractors. While you can outsource tasks to highly qualified consultants, you absolutely cannot outsource an FDA Form 483. The final compliance accountability always rests right there with your firm. If a consultant messes up while operating under your quality system, the FDA isn't going to look at them, they're going to look straight at you.
Because of that ultimate accountability, you've got to detail the exact records and oversight needed for these external workers. Section 211.34 insists the consultants must have sufficient education, training, and experience for the specific services they're providing. You are literally required to retain meticulous records of their name, their address, and their specific qualifications for the entire time they're engaged with you. Most importantly, this regulation reinforces that their work has to be actively managed and verified by your firm. Think of them as an extension of your workforce. They require rigorous, constant oversight.
And that brings us to Section 5, Audit Risks and Decisions.
This is where we look at the practitioner's reality. So, let's break down some common FDA Form 483 patterns and pair them directly with the mitigations you need to protect your organization from compliance failures. Say an inspector spots an operator running a batch without current SOP training? Well, you mitigate that with a dynamically reconciled training matrix. What about a citation for the QCU reporting into production management? The fix there is elevating the QCU reporting line directly to the board level, or at least senior management, to absolutely guarantee independence. And if someone finds personnel with an untreated illness in a clean room, you've got to implement mandatory pre-entry health declarations and a really strict illness reporting procedure. It's all about matching the risk with a bulletproof mitigation.
Clearly mapping out the hierarchy of operational decisions is a real game changer. It ensures everyone in the facility knows exactly who has the final authoritative say. For instance, releasing a batch, that is a purely independent QCU decision. Halting production entirely, again, that rests on the QCU's override-proof authority. But what about assigning a properly trained operator for a daily shift? That sits squarely with the production supervisor, checked against the training record, of course. And engaging a new consultant is going to require HR, management, and QCU oversight combined. Knowing this decision matrix inside and out prevents cross-departmental friction and, most importantly, keeps you compliant.
Now you can use this rapid-fire self-audit checklist to verify that your facility perfectly aligns with all Subpart B mandates way before an inspector ever knocks on your door. Ask yourself right now, is your QCU reporting line truly independent? Are all QCU responsibilities meticulously documented and assigned out? Are training records currently up to date for every single operator and linked directly to the required SOP modules? Are your hygiene and clothing requirements clearly defined and trained against? Do you have an active working illness reporting procedure? And finally, are all of your consultant qualifications comprehensively filed with their oversight fully documented?
All right, let's lock in the essential takeaways from this explainer so you can confidently apply them right away on the production floor. Number 1, your quality control unit must be independent, featuring absolute batch release authority. 2, Section 211.25 demands that everyone is qualified by a combination of education, training, and experience. 3, that training has to be initial, continuing, job-specific, and fully documented. 4, Section 211.28 rigidly controls clothing, hygiene, health, and facility access. And number 5, Section 211.34 governs consultants, serving as a stark reminder that no matter who actually does the work, the firm is ultimately responsible.
I'm going to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to challenge how you evaluate your own facility. Take a really hard look at your organizational chart and your operational realities today. Is your quality control unit truly independent with the override-proof authority to actually halt production? Or are they just a signature on a page waiting for production leadership to give them the nod? Thank you so much for engaging with this explainer, and keep building that culture of uncompromising quality.